This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Good morning. This is also the day that marks the one-year anniversary of beginning our worship remotely. And so we have a day to be grateful for God's faithfulness throughout this past year. A day to recognize that with God's help, we can persevere through grief, a variety of losses, and a variety of challenges. And so we are thankful that we have grown our dependence on Christ this year. Amen? Amen. So I am Pastor Joni Schilling, and it's a joy to welcome you here. If you're worshiping with us online, please let us know that you're with us by filling out the connection card and letting us know of any prayer concerns that you have. Today is the fourth Sunday of our Lenten journey. We are continuing our series entitled Walk, 5 Essential Practices of the Christian Faith. And the title of today's message is The Good Life. Let us worship Jesus Christ.
It is a good life. Joni, I hope you don't mind the little musical bed underneath your morning welcome. It just feels right, doesn't it? Good morning. I hope you feel right this morning, whether you're in person or whether you're online with us. Thank you for joining us. And let's not make it about us. Let's make it about our Heavenly Father. And so, wherever you find yourself in this moment, just take a breath. If you're able to stand, please stand. If that's your posture for worship, I invite you to do that. We come this morning with gratitude, Father. Gratitude for a life that is more amazing than anything we could have dreamed of. So with that in our hearts, praise on our lips, we open our mouths and we sing, what can I give to you? What can I offer to the King for all the love you've shown, for all your mercy over me? Call my name, you heard my cry, out of the grave and into life. My heart is yours, my soul is free. Thank you, God, for saving me. Thank you, God, for saving me. The rock of salvation, my hope is built on nothing
victory rose. You made us all your own. Now we are saved. Thank you, God, for saving me. Thank you, God, for saving me. I call your name, you heard my cry. Out of the grave and into life, my heart is yours, my soul is free. Thank you, God, for saving me. Thank you, God, for saving me. Thank you, God, for saving me.
God's people say, amen. Let's pray this morning, shall we? Father, we as a church find ourselves wandering through this book, walking through this book, walking through our relationship with you in moments of learning and moments of finger pointing. And what I mean by that, Father, is there are moments in my life where it feels like, okay, it's not a finger point. It's more like you in love, like a father reaching out to a child, putting his finger on the heart of the issue. Father, we live in a society where every voice around us is telling us just the opposite of Jesus' teaching. That our lives, in fact, do revolve around an abundance of stuff. Our culture tells us that if we just had bigger, better, nicer, cooler stuff, we'd be happier and more fulfilled. This morning, as we opened our news feed, there was an article about 10 watches and all the magazines that we subscribe to and the cars that pull up next to us at the stoplight that we find ourselves comparing. We even do it here in church. Well, I'm not wired like he is. I'm not gifted like she is. I wish I could. So we take a breath with that knowledge this morning, Father, that we as humans have lost our way. I stumble with words. I'm really sensitive about language, Father. Because what I know about you is you welcome everyone, no matter what we speak or no matter what our life has been, no matter how selfish or unselfish we are, you welcome us all. And so with each breath, with each step, with each prayer, with each song, with each praise, we come to this moment where we just have to fall on our knees and trust you, Father. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime of praying and crying to Heavenly Father. Sometimes your Spirit can descend in a moment and put your finger back on the heart and say, you're mine. I got you. I love those moments, Father. So with gratitude in our hearts and an awareness of how we are wired as human beings, we pray for trust this morning. We pray for trusting you, Father. Together we say thank you, and together we say,
letting go of every single dream, I lay each one down at your feet. Every moment of my wandering never changes what you see. I've tried to win this war, I confess. My hands are weary, I need your rest. Mighty warrior, king of the fight. No matter what I face, you're by my side. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers, as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. Truth is, I know what tomorrow brings. trust in you. I will trust in you. You are my strength and comfort. You are my steady hand. You are my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand. You are always high. Your plans are always good. There's not a place where I'll go you've not already stood. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. I will trust in you.
Somebody say amen.
This morning's children's message is for the child in all of us and the children online. And if you have ever tasted milk that has sat in the fridge too long, you know that it has become sour. It smells funny. It doesn't taste good. We say that that milk has spoiled. Just like milk, most foods have an expiration date. If you don't use the food by that date, it goes bad. It's no good anymore. In Matthew chapter 25, 14 through 30, there is a parable about some people who are given some talents. One of the people does not use their talent, but instead decides to bury it. And that person loses their talent because he doesn't use it. The other people use their talent, and their talent grows and multiplies. Just like the milk, if you don't use it, you lose it. The talent goes the same way. If you don't use it, you lose it. God gives us talent, time, and money. And it is very true that he wants us to use those, because if we don't use them, we will lose them. If we don't utilize the gifts and skills he gives us, we will not be as good at them, and we will be unable to use them to our full capacity. If we don't use our time wisely, we will watch it slip away, wondering where the day has gone. If we don't use our money, we hide it under a mattress or put it in a piggy bank and don't do anything with it, it will devalue and not be worth very much. But it is also true that we can use our items and still lose them. So I want to change that phrase just a bit to better reflect what God calls us to do. The more appropriate phrase for what God calls us to do is not to use it or lose it, but rather giving is living. If I use the skills and gifts that God gives me, but they only benefit me, they are not being used to the best that they can be. But if I use them to glorify God, then certainly giving is living. If my time is only my time and I don't use it for the benefit of others, then I am not using it the best it can be. But if I use it to serve, then giving is living. And if my money is my money alone, then it is not utilized the best that it can be. But if I use my money to help others, then giving is living. We must know that God has gifted us in many ways, and our use of the gifts of the time and talent and money that he has given us are our response to those gifts that he has given us. Will you pray with me? Dear God, help us to see your gifts to us and realize that if we fail to use our gifts, we may lose them. But more importantly, it is in giving that we are truly living. It's in your holy name that we pray, and all of God's children said, Amen. And I would like to let you know of 2 opportunities for you to use and not lose and give of those gifts of time and talent. One of them is today from 11:30 to 1 o'clock, immediately following this service here in the Family Life Center. You can come and decorate a sign to say thank you to Maumee City School teachers for all that they have done to teach our kids virtually during this pandemic. So if you would like to stay and decorate a thank you sign after this service, we invite you to do that. And I have had many questions about an Easter egg hunt this year. And I am saddened to tell you we will not be doing one, but there is another opportunity for an Easter egg-like activity this year. So we are asking families and congregation members to consider egging a friend or neighbor. Yes, you heard me right. We'd love for you to egg your friends and neighbors. And what that means is that we are going to ask you to pick up an Egg Your Neighbor kit starting on March 28th, which includes plastic eggs, candy, and a sign that you place on their door that invites them to an Easter service and reminds them what the reason we have Easter is. So on March 28th, you will be able to pick that up. If you have children under 5th grade, you will be guaranteed one of those kits. If you do not, it's on a first-come, first-served basis, but you can always pick up the instructions in the sign if you want to get the eggs and candy yourself. And then you can go and deliver eggs to anyone you want to tell them all about Easter and to remind them why we celebrate. So we hope that you will use your time and talents in those ways.
Well, thank you, Bethany. If I feel like a 5th grader, can I get a guarantee on the Easter eggs? She's just walking out. She's not even looking back. Look at that. I tell you what. Well, good morning. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Russ Titchener. Honored to be one of the pastors here at Maumee United Methodist Church. And as Pastor Joni said, we are in our 4th Sunday of Lent, church season where we prepare our hearts to travel to the cross with Jesus. And one of the ways that we prepare our hearts, or many of the ways we prepare our hearts, are what we're looking at during this study in this book by Adam Hamilton with the same name as our series, The Walk. Those practices that Jesus demonstrated, such as worship and prayer and serving and reading scriptures. Those are the ones that we've looked at so far. And he did that so that he could stay in step with his Father. And we're looking at these same practices to make sure that in our lives we can practice those same things so we can stay in step with Jesus. This morning we'll be looking at another practice, the practice of giving, and specifically giving our time and talents, but focus more on today on giving our money in a sermon that's titled The Good Life. So let's take a moment and pray, and then I'll move into the sermon. Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you for your grace and for your mercy and for your justice and for all the qualities in which you demonstrate to us as your children. Help us to be like you, Lord. When it comes to our finances, help us to be like you, be a people of generosity, the same as you are with us. And so bless us this morning as we move into a deeper understanding of what that means in our lives. We love you and we pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. When I was a kid, I had 2 basset hounds. I think Bill Cox has a basset hound, so he knows what I'm talking about here. I had 2 basset hounds. One was the male basset hound went by the name Claude, and the female basset hound went by the name Duchess. They had their own unique personalities. I can remember the first times we ever prepared breakfast for them, a breakfast of pancakes. We had gotten to the end of breakfast, and my mom had some extra batter, and she goes, I think I'm going to make the dog some pancakes. So she whipped up about, 6 or 7 pancakes. I volunteered to take them outside. And when I did, I held them down and let them get a whiff of the hot, warm pancake, right? And then I took them, and I started throwing them like Frisbees out into the yard. And when I did, of course, they took off after him. Claude, the male basset hound, went over to it and smelled it and grabbed it, and just like a perfect basset hound, laid down in the grass and started to eat his breakfast, right? Duchess, on the other hand, being a little smarter than Claude, she ran up to the first pancake. She bit it 2 or 3 times, stuffed it into her cheek, and then proceeded to run to the second one, doing the same thing over and over again until she had grabbed all other 5 or 6 pancakes, and then moved to the far corner of the yard where she spit them all out and then started eating them one by one, right? Claude, on the other hand, after he finished his first pancake, looks up and says, "Where are all the other pancakes?" And seeing Duchess goes, "Aha." To which an incredible fight broke out in the back corner of the yard, right? After that, we only gave them pancakes one at a time, and when they were all gone, I made them open their mouth, move their tongue around, kind of make sure they were all gone until I gave them another one. You know, many times when it comes to money and possessions, we can start to look like Duchess. Oh, we may start out well by simply focusing on our needs. I need some food on the table. I need a roof over my house. I need a car to drive. I need some clothes to wear. But then somewhere along the way, something starts to happen to our psyche, so to speak. Because of the talents and the opportunities that God has given us, we suddenly start to realize oftentimes that we have the ability to gather more pancakes more quickly, perhaps, than those around us. And even though our needs have been met, we continue to gather more and more and more because somewhere along the way, society has told us that bigger was better, or that the person who has the most toys at the end of the journey wins the game. Somewhere along the way, the world has told us, quick, go out and grab all the pancakes you can before somebody else gets them. You know, the idea of grabbing as many pancakes as you can really isn't the problem. The problem is keeping all the pancakes that you grab. You see, if we're not careful, we can begin to think that the road to the good life is keeping all those pancakes, and the reality is that is a lie that the world tells us. In fact, Jesus says exactly the opposite. He says this in Luke 12. He says, beware. Really, he doesn't say that. He says, beware, right? Guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own. And yet, oftentimes, we do measure life. We do measure life by how much we owe or we own. So much so that in many of our minds, our view of achieving happiness, or our view of achieving the so-called, if you will, good life, is directly related to how much money we have and how many possessions we own and how much free time we have to enjoy that money and those possessions. You know, lurking beneath this kind of common view of life, especially in the Western world, is the ancient philosophy that the Greeks called hedonism. Hedonism comes from the Greek word for pleasure and is a philosophy that taught that the highest good in life is the pursuit of pleasure. And therefore, the main purpose of humanity is to maximize our pleasure and to minimize our pain. We see that kind of mindset in the writings of King Solomon as he pursues those very things. In Ecclesiastes 2, he says this. He said, I also tried to find meaning by building huge homes for myself and by planting beautiful vineyards. I made gardens and parks, filling them with all kinds of fruit trees. I built reservoirs to collect the water to irrigate my many flourishing groves. I bought slaves, both men and women, and others were born into my household. I also owned large herds and flocks, more than any of the kings who had lived in Jerusalem before me. I collected great sums of silver and gold, the treasury of many kings and provinces. I hired wonderful singers, both men and women, and I had beautiful concubines. I had everything a man could desire. Anything I wanted, I would take. I denied myself no pleasure. Yes, if ever there was a litmus test in the hedonistic lifestyle, it would be King Solomon, that poster child, if you will, for pursuing all pleasure at all costs. And so it goes to reason if that kind of lifestyle can lead you to true happiness, It goes to reason that if that kind of lifestyle could be the ultimate expression, if you will, of the good life, then Solomon must have been the happiest man who ever lived. And yet that wasn't the case. King Solomon finishes his thoughts concerning his lust for money and possessions by writing this. He says, "But as I looked at everything I had worked so hard to accomplish, it was all so meaningless, like chasing the wind. There was nothing really worthwhile anywhere." You know, there is no doubt that our money and that our possessions and even experiences that we can do because of our money, there's no doubt that can bring us some satisfaction in life, right, to a degree. But Solomon demonstrates that what those things cannot do is that they cannot deliver true happiness to us. What they cannot do is deliver to us the good life that we are truly looking for, because it is only through God that we can achieve that good life that our heart truly desires. And that is why Jesus tells us, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Yes, if our heart is focused on worldly things, then we will end up being disappointed. But if our heart points to God and our heart is focused on heavenly things, well, when it comes to money and possessions, then we can start to experience that good life that God truly wants us to have. And so how do we do that? How do we get our heart focused on heavenly things? How do we get our heart focused on God when it comes to money and possessions in our life? Well, Adam Hamilton suggests that the journey to God's good life when it comes to money and possessions starts with 3 steps. And the first step, he says, is developing a gratitude for what God has already placed in our lives right now, right at this very moment. Adam Hamilton tells the story of how in August of 2012, he replaced his 2006 Ford Mustang convertible with a brand new 2013, I guess, because it's the August, right? The 13s were coming out. Brand new 2013 Ford GT Mustang convertible, right? He said the new car, man, had a powerful V8 engine versus the old V6 engine. The new one had 420 horsepower. He said it was his midlife crisis car, and it put a huge smile on his face, right? But then, Les, I'm talking to you here. I'm sorry if I dampen your business here. But then, 2 years later, Ford did the unbelievable. They came out with a new and more powerful model with more bells and whistles on it. And then a couple years after that, they did it again, and then again. So with each new redesign, Adam would look at his car in the garage, and it just didn't have that cool factor anymore, right? In fact, he goes on to tell how with each new design change, he would go to their website and do one of those virtual builds, right? And select the big new engine and the awesome suspension and the new color that had just come out, right? He'd select that new Bose surround sound, right? And all the things that make those models really cool. But then he said, before I hit the build button, before I go down and talk to Les and order my new car, I'd walk back out into my garage and open up that 2013 convertible and sit in the seat and start the engine and listen to those boom, 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 right? And then I'd back it out and I'd drive it down the street and I'd take it for a drive. And then I'd come home and I'd go back into my garage and I'd shut it off. And I would thank God for that car. Thank God for the gift that he had given me. And he said that because he got into a habit of doing that he saved at least $40,000 in his lifetime, because that's what it would have cost to continue to trade up to these cars. and thereby giving him more finances to spend on things that he really cared about, right? And more financial cushion to reduce the amount of financial pressure that sometimes is in our life because we overextend ourselves. He goes on to make the point that he would go through that same practice of giving gratitude in his marriage. And hopefully many of us do that also. I know I do. How many times during my morning prayer time have I prayed for my wife, Michelle, especially and almost always when we've had disagreements from the day before? That morning prayer time becomes a prayer of gratitude to God for who he's given me. Or how about my children or friends when they disappoint me? That next morning prayer time for me is truly about giving thanks in the midst of my disappointment for them in my life. Gratitude is what keeps us connected to the value of the gifts that God has given us. No matter if it is gratitude for the food that he has set on our table, or for the roof that we are currently living under, or for the job that we have, or for the car that we drive, or for the family members and friends that God has surrounded us with. Ultimately, it is gratitude that keeps us connected to the most precious gift God has given us, and that is in Jesus Christ. The second step of the journey to God's good life when it comes to money and possessions is found in living purposely. Proverbs 29:18 says this, says, where there is no vision, the people perish. Yes, without a godly vision in our life, without a godly purpose, if you will, for our lives, then we can easily get trapped of living in a life where all we do is focus on pancake after pancake after pancake, with little concern for anything or anyone else. You know, I had this past Friday, how many days is that? 2 days. Past Friday, I had my regular 3-year colonoscopy checkup. Woo! Now, I have probably shared this with you way too many times, but, I'm on my way out, so I'm going to do it again, right? But 13 years ago, when I was 50, during a regular colonoscopy, right, they discovered a stage 3 cancerous tumor. And after my surgeries and after my treatment, then my doctors put me on a colonoscopy schedule that is every 3 years, rather than the 5-year schedule that you would get if you had a colonoscopy because you had a history of it in your family. You wouldn't have to have it, but if you have a history of colorectal cancer in your family, they'll put you on every 5-year schedule. Or if your first colonoscopy you had some polyps, which they could easily remove, then they would put you on a 5-year schedule. Or they put you on a 10-year schedule, once every 10 years, if you don't have any of those. As Michelle reminds me, who is on a 10-year rotation, right? It is only for those with the perfect colon, and her doctor tells her that she has a perfect colon. I said, aren't you proud? Aren't you proud? Now, the reason I mention that is because oftentimes, and probably the reason I talk about this, hopefully more often than not, is because colorectal cancer is a silent killer. Usually by the time you start having symptoms, it's probably too late oftentimes. And I don't mean to, if you're dealing with that, I was stage 3, so God can do wonderful things in our lives. But oftentimes the symptoms are late. And so the way to correct that is simply go for a colonoscopy, because it's very preventable. And so about right now, you are probably asking yourself, Pastor Russ, or if this is the first time you've tuned in or first time you've been at our church, you're probably thinking, Pastor Russ, what does your colonoscopy have to do with living life purposely? And I'm glad you asked that question, because that will let me get to the point I'm trying to make here. So this last Friday, when I went into the clinic, I'd already met with a doctor. First time I've been at this doctor, never been at this clinic before. But everyone I met, starting with the admission clerk, to the nurse who got me prepped and put in my IV, to the nurse who came to check on me, he was going to be in the OR, to the anesthesiologist, to the secondary anesthesiologist, and finally the doctor coming back in, who I had met before. Well, every one of them, except for the doctor, asked me, and when was your last colonoscopy? Because they always ask you, and when was your last colonoscopy? And when I say 3 years, they always stop. Because they're going to turn and look at me and ask me, why 3 years, right? And so before they even get to that, I anticipate that, and they stop right, and they turn to me, and I say, 12 years ago, had a stage 3 cancerous tumor. And it registers. And then I look at them directly in the eye while they're still looking at me, and I tell them, thank you for what you're doing, because you're saving lives. And when I do that, and when I did that Friday, of I think the 5 people I said that to, 4 of them teared up, right? You see, like any job, doctors and nurses doing the same procedure over and over and over again. In fact, I heard the nurses in there this morning, we are packed today, right? And you do that over and over and over again. You forget, as a doctor or a nurse, an anesthesiologist, just how important what you are doing really is. And so I can be purposeful in my life and remind them what they are truly doing. The life-giving therapy, the life-giving procedure that they are doing for people in the community. I can love with my heart and touch theirs with this information to make sure that they remember why they're doing what they are doing. Perhaps you need to be purposeful in telling your spouse you love them, or a friend that you love them, or your parents that you love them, or your children you love them. I remember about a month ago I sent a text to my 3 kids, and I just said, good morning. I want you to know I love each of you. All right? Just being purposeful, right? Perhaps you have been to the store. You've been one of the ones that continued to go into the store during the pandemic. And so hopefully as you passed a stocker in the grocery store aisles, you looked at them and said, thank you for what you're doing because you're in a risky space and you're doing this so I can have food on my table. Or thank you to the cashier for being willing to be front and center when it's a pandemic going on around them. Perhaps living purposely for you means that you've signed up for the prayer chain. And we've had a lot of prayer chains coming through. And you've committed to praying for those folks every single time one comes through. Or perhaps you signed up to teach a Sunday school class or a small group. Perhaps you're one of the volunteers that go down to St. Paul's to feed the homeless. Or one of the volunteers on our church committees or our church teams. Or perhaps you are one of the many people, and we have many people, probably, I don't know, close to 100 people that serve in Mosaic ministry in all different capacities at this church. Perhaps you are one of the people that walk beside those who are hurting as a Stephen minister. Or help to participate in the Kairos prison ministry that we do from our church. Or perhaps you are one of those who supports the Friendly Center. Or helps in our recovery ministries for those who are struggling with addiction. Or perhaps you're one of those who are going to leave the service this morning and walk outside across the hallway up to the first room on your right, I think it is, and make a sign for our teachers to say, thank you for doing what you've done this last year. Or perhaps you are one of the ones that in the next couple weeks are going to egg another person without being arrested. You see, living purposely through our actions that are driven by love will take our focus off trying to collect all the pancakes in life. Because let me tell you, there's no purpose in doing that. Yes, allowing God to use our time and our talents and our actions to be purposeful. Well, that will indeed store up great and grand treasures for us in heaven. And finally, the third step to God's good life when it comes to money and possessions is found in being generous both with God and with others. Adam Hamilton tells a story about a friend who's a CPA, And he said a couple years ago, he had a conversation with him at tax season. And he said, as they were talking, Adam's friend said, you know, you can tell a lot about a person through their tax returns. He says it's kind of like taking a selfie, if you will, right? By looking at a person's tax return. The man went on to tell Adam that he and his associates had developed something that was different from the regular credit score that oftentimes you would get if you applied for a loan or a mortgage. He said they developed what was called the tax return credit score that simply boils down to this, that the greater the charitable giving in a person's life, the greater their ability to repay a loan. In fact, they went back and looked over several years and looked at people who defaulted on loans and looked at the information they had available to them. And when the normal credit scores rated them good, they could go back and look at this charitable giving versus their ability to repay the loan. And that ratio actually was much, much better predictor of who could pay off the loan. The greater your charitable giving, the better risk you were. And you know, it makes sense, because if we're not spending all of our money on debt, if we're spending more of our money on charitable giving, then doesn't that mean that we are probably living below our means? And if we're living below our means, that means we're at better risk. And I believe if we're living below our means, that probably also means that we're more generous with God and we're more generous with other people. Jesus wraps up both those ideas in one statement when he is addressing the pastors of the church, if you will, of his day by telling them this. He said, you should give God what is his, both your love and your money, but you should also be doing things to restore justice to others. Now, I think God's view of justice is much bigger than our view of justice. We will get through a narrow slice of justice and say, justice looks like this. We might say, justice looks like race issues, and it does, right? But it's much broader, right? Justice, I think, in God's kingdom is when your neighbor goes to bed without food, and you know it and don't do something about it. That's a justice issue. Or get this one. When your neighbor goes to bed without food, and you don't know it, but haven't done anything to find out about it. I think that's a justice issue too. You should also be doing things that restore justice to others. Jesus says in Luke 11, it says, what sorrow awaits you Pharisees, you pastors, for you are careful to tithe even the tiniest income from your herb gardens. They would literally go around to their gardens and take a tenth, the tithes of the tenth, and snip off a tenth of the herbs and collect them and go to the temple and present that. That's how legalistic they were. You are careful to tithe even the tiniest income from your herb gardens, but you ignore justice and the love of God. You should tithe, yes, Jesus says, but do not neglect the more important things. Living within our means gives us the ability to do more, to be more generous with God with both our love and our funds, and our money. You may say, how does living within my means allow me to love God more with my heart? Well, I guarantee you, if you're not and I'm not running around picking up all the pancakes that we see, we will have more time to focus on God in prayer and in worship and in study and all the things that draw us to him in love, along with being more generous to him with our income. We will love God with both our hearts and our wallets while at the same time reaching out to help others. All because we're willing to deny ourselves. Those things we want, we say, no, I'm not going to pick up another pancake. I'm going to live within my means. Yes, the key to being generous starts with a heart that is willing to deny itself. So let's take a moment. Let's watch this video, and maybe this will help us to understand this.
This year for Christmas, what are you hoping to get?
A computer. Big, giant Barbie house.
A trophy case.
Xbox 360. Minecraft Legos.
What do you think your mom or dad want for Christmas?
My mom would probably want a ring. She's never really had a ring.
Jewelry. She loves jewelry. A new TV.
Like watches.
So, you actually did buy an Xbox 360.
What in the world? And what is this? Okay, you really got this for me?
A new laptop.
Wow.
And
It's a necklace.
so we also bought a necklace because you said you also wanted to get a necklace for your mom or your auntie. The catch is that you can either get a gift for yourself, or you can pick a gift for your mom and dad. I need you to pick one. Now before you answer, oh, I bet that's hard. Is that a really hard question?
Mm-hmm.
What gift do you pick?
I choose this.
I gotta go with the ring.
What gift do you pick?
That one. That one. The dress.
I'll choose this for my mom.
I'll choose this one.
It's a really tough question,
I'll
but
give him this.
you already know? Tell me why.
Because Legos don't matter. Your family matters. Not Legos, not toys, your family. So it's either family or Legos, and I choose family.
I get gifts every year from my family, and my mom don't get anything.
If I get a laptop, my mama will something. She helps me when I'm sick. She helps me with my homework. She gave me a house to live in.
They look out for me and do stuff for me, so I need to give back to them.
Now I have the opportunity to give him something.
Because you actually picked the gift for your family, you're actually gonna go home with both. Tell me how you're feeling.
I'm feeling really happy and thankful.
Just happy. Thankful.
For your family? For what?
My family, everything.
He did make his decision, actually. And he picked the Pandora charms.
Oh, that is sweet. That made me cry. So what are you going to do for me? Oh, it's for me? Oh, it's so cute.
Thanks, guys.
I was going to.
Either families or Legos. Either family or Legos, and I choose family. Amen. You know, over the last 4 weeks, since we started the sermon series, you as a church have gone beyond yourselves in living out this third step. You remember 4 weeks ago, I made a $20,000 challenge to you to support our friends at Mosaic Ministries. And at the same time, I also challenged you not to forget to support the regular ministries of our church, because at the time that we made the challenge, we were about $6,000 behind last year's giving. And a couple weeks before that, we were up to, in January, $17,000 behind last year's giving. So it was pretty dicey there for a while, right? And so I asked you, I said, I'm going to challenge you to this $20,000 for Mosaic, but I'm also going to challenge you to continue to support the ministries of Mommy United Methodist Church. In other words, I'm asking you to be generous to God and to be generous to others. And so when I looked this week to see where we were at in our giving against last year, I was so pleasantly surprised when Dave sent out the numbers for this last week that we're actually $2,000 ahead right now of where we were last year's giving, which is really awesome, right? In the midst of a pandemic, right? Amen. Amen. And on top of that, your generosity to others has just been amazing. I have new numbers for our walk with Mosaic. You want the numbers? Huh? Yeah, okay. So first week we had, remember how much? 7,000. Remember we were 7. Second week we were 17,000. Third week we were 17,500. This week we are. Now, this is all in. This is all contributions, all matches, all the money from GoFundMe, all the money from the Tithely app, all the money that you just write a check to Mosaic and send it to the church. All in. Currently, right now, we have 2 more weeks left. We're at $42,700. Isn't that awesome? And all of this in the midst of a pandemic. Yes, the journey to God's good life when it comes to money and possessions is not to grab all the pancakes you see, right? And run back to the corner of the yard. But rather to be thankful for what you and I have. To be purposeful in our lives. And to live below our means so that we might be generous both with God and with each other. Will you pray with me? Heavenly Father, I'm so grateful for this body, for this congregation, for this church, for this community of faith that we do life with. Lord, we're so grateful for you for empowering us through your Spirit to do that life. And for the generous things you have given us, chief among them, Lord, our salvation found in Jesus Christ, but for the roof over our head and the cars we drive and the food we eat and the families we have. Lord, help us never grow weary of thanking you for what you have given us. Help us never to grow weary of being purposeful in reaching out into the lives of others, that we might extend generosity to you and to your kingdom, to this world that desperately needs to know the good news of Jesus Christ. Lord, continue to empower us through and with your Spirit, so that we might be the image of Christ to the world. And we will give you all the glory and all the praise. Praying this in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life. All over my life. I see your promises in fulfillment all over my life. All over my life. Sing that again. I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life. All over my life. I see your promises in fulfillment all over my life. Faithfulness has walked beside me. The winter storms make way for spring. In every season from where I am standing, I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life. Fulfillment
pray with me? Lord, there are some of us right now brought to tears of gratitude because we realize what you've helped us through and how there's signs of your goodness and your presence in our lives. And Lord, there's others among us who are brought to tears because we're having trouble seeing it. There's so much hardship and darkness and challenge. So Lord, we do pray together in community right now for eyes to see your goodness, for evidence that you are indeed a promise keeper, for hearts to better understand what it means that Christ came, that you came, God, as Jesus, that you sacrificed your life out of great love for us, for that to have a meaning that lifts us up above all these earthly challenges. Especially, Lord, the hope that we have that the sufferings of this life are nothing compared to the glory that is to come and the wonderful glimpses of glory that you will give us on this side of eternity. We surrender our lives and our hearts and our eyes to see to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Well, what a powerful message about giving. What a wonderful testimony you all are to your trust in God, that you are willing to give so generously, both to this congregation and to the needs of the hungry and the homeless in our community. And you have taken advantage of those variety of ways to give through this particular church, that every week we celebrate and name that you can give as you leave this space. For those of you that are here in person, you can give on this worship platform at the Giving tab or on our church website, and you can give by dropping off a contribution or mailing it to our church office. One of the ways that we can continue to give to the ministries of our mission work of this church is through something that we might be doing anyway, and that's buying gift cards. So we have this way that 2 or 3 times a year, if you buy your gift cards through this church, a portion of money goes to this church's mission work. So if you have gift cards to buy, there's an order form online, and there's an order form in the gathering area outside this worship space. Those need to be back by next Sunday with a form and money to the church office. It's also available, on FYI Friday. So as we start to come back feeling safer, we appreciate your support of registering that you are going to be coming. We want to be prepared so that we can be socially distanced and safely spaced. So please allow ushers to seat you as you come into this space each Sunday. And then as we depart, would you also allow the ushers to dismiss you by row? So now go in peace, trusting in God, trusting in those amazing signs of God's goodness. Go forth with that purposeful living that gives richness and fullness to each day. Amen.
I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I see the promises in fulfillment.